Hi, and welcome to the second installment in our series about my library. Just a reminder from yesterday that most of what you see is really here for reference. I certainly have not learned or read everything that's in these books, but what we're trying to do is to show you how everything fits together, as well as to take a deeper dive into some things. In particular, we'll take a little bit of a deep dive into Talmud eventually, but for now we're working on just what's in these shelves. So we talked yesterday about the Talmud. This is the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud. These are legal codes. This is the foundational legal code, not of the Shulchan Aruch, but what the Shulchan Aruch was based on, the Code of Jewish Law was based on. This is known as the Torah. This is the Shulchan Aruch itself, which is the Code of Jewish Law. And this is a copy of the Shulchan Aruch that belonged to my grandfather, and which has been bequeathed to me. We had over here, sorry for the back, we had over here Torah and Bible commentary, some reference tools. We'll look at more reference tools as we go. And some books down here about the Bible, and I mentioned James Quigley yesterday as an author. I'd like to take a look, we mentioned Midrash yesterday, by the way. We have Midrash, various other Chumashim. We started to talk about Mishnah yesterday. I want to talk about Mishnah a little bit more today. So we're going to talk a little bit about Mishnah. We'll talk about Mishnah more when we take a look at the Talmud inside, and then introduce you to some of the other things on the bookshelf here. Okay, so as I mentioned yesterday, some of these books look particularly well worn. That's a good sign. Most of the books do not look particularly well worn. That means that I haven't gone through them in great detail, or at least not in this particular volume. So for example, many of my Talmud volumes would be much better worn if I wasn't studying Talmud on a regular basis on the ArtScroll Talmud app on my iPad. So the iPad's not here in the bookcase. Okay, so let's talk about Mishnah a little bit. The reason why these are particularly well worn, these two deal with the Mishnayos, which deal with the Mishnah that discusses the holidays, Sabbath, Passover. Actually, if I take you up here, I can give you the various tractates, the various subjects that are covered in this particular section of the Mishnah. So if we take a look here, Shabbos, Eruv, Pesach. Shkolim is not something that we generally deal with because we don't have the temple, but Shkolim, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, the laws of Muktzah, if you're familiar with that, fasting. Megillah is about Purim. Moed Katan is about Chol HaMoed and Chagiga. These are all the subjects that are covered in the Mishnah about the holidays. Now I'm just going to, for a moment, by way of comparison, this to this. And actually the comparison's a little bit sharper as to how much Mishnah there is as opposed to how much Talmud. But we'll talk about that when we get into greater depth about Talmud. Now, this particular set of Mishnahs is a classic set known as the Yochin Boaz, and it has certain classical commentators on it that make commentaries that make it much easier to study the Mishnah if you're familiar with Hebrew. Now, if you're familiar with modern Hebrew, there is the Kahati Mishnah. This edition of the Mishnah, which was put together by Rabbi Pinchas Kahati, actually originally appeared in, I don't remember, it might be Haaretz, but one of the Israeli newspapers, where it would be, he would put in 2 Mishnahs a day with a running simple commentary in basic Hebrew, and then eventually it ended up being a 12-volume set, and again, very straightforward Hebrew translation. If you're not familiar with Hebrew, we have other options for you. So this, is all of the Mishnah from this with an English translation and commentary. This is put out by ArtScroll publication. You can see the Mishnah. This is the ArtScroll publication. They come in different larger volumes as well. And so those are various options. Also, for those who, like me, sometimes need information presented a little bit more graphically, we have picture Mishnayos. Yes, picture Mishnahs with lots of pictures to help you understand what's going on as well as a classic commentary. So we don't want to be trapping animals on Shabbos and the various types of traps that they used to use. Sometimes it's very, very interesting. We see from the Mishnah the way that people behaved in those times. Can be very, very enlightening in terms of certain Jewish practices. Okay, that is our Mishnah section. Let me introduce you to some other primary and research reference-based tools, and then we're going to come back and look at some other things on my shelf. This is the Mishnah Torah of the Rambam. This is the Rambam's Code of Jewish Law. It's a revolutionary book. We'll talk about why when we delve into the Talmud, but this is Maimonides' magnum opus on Jewish law. Maimonides has many philosophical writings, which are not included here, but this is one of the foundational texts that was incorporated into Jewish law and which finds its way into the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch as well. These are pictures, by the way, of, let's see who we have here, just because it's a great place to display them. This is my mom, may she rest in peace. My dad, picture's too small. This is Rabbi Weinbach as a small child. I don't know if the picture's large enough for you to really appreciate it, but I have my clip-on gloves and my box of animal crackers, which you could never separate me from. I love the animal crackers. And Rabbi and Yocheved back in the day on our wedding night. Okay, after that digression, that clears the shelf. I'm going to clear that shelf for the moment. Oh, it's my wedding picture. That shouldn't happen. Okay, here we go. Somehow, no more broken than my wedding is. My marriage is. Okay, here we go. The Aruch HaShulchan. This is another classical work of Jewish law. 18th century, particularly unusual analytical style. Great work. Also tends not to be quite as stringent as some of the modern commentators. Down here we have a collection of Hasidic works. Let me share that with you. This is a copy of the Zohar, which is a famous mystical writing, the book of the Zohar. These here, from here to about here, are the works of this, many of the works of the Hasidim of Slonim. Slonim has its Hasidic center, well, there are two of them because they can't seem to agree who the Rebbe is, but one is in Jerusalem and one is in Bnei Brak. And this is the Nesivo Shalom, which I often quote and try to study on a daily basis, and some other items. This is the Eish Kodesh. The Eish Kodesh is another Hasidic work. This Hasidic work was written actually in the Warsaw Ghetto during the worst of times, and the Rav of Piezna, I'm not sure quite how to pronounce it, but anyway, this is a very, very famous work. It was written during in the ghetto, in the Warsaw Ghetto during the oppression there, and it's a remarkable work that was saved after the war. This is a general book on the religious order of Hasidism by Rabbi Norman Lamb. Some other Hasidic works as well. Some works from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, here's Rav Nachman of Breslov. Some of these works are some of my earliest books, actually. This one dates back, I don't know, to my 20s, early 20s. So that's there. Down here I have works of Jewish law, practical Jewish law, although we have a little bit more Hasidus. We've got, we've got Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, an important light in modern Jewish thought. We've got plenty of Joshua Heschel here. These are some practical Jewish legal works. We'll discuss them more going on. The most famous of the ones on this shelf is arguably the Igros Moshe. The Igros Moshe are the response of Rav Moshe Feinstein, which were written in the second half of the 20th century by and large, and deal with many modern questions of technology. How do you deal with technology within Jewish law, medical ethics within Jewish law? It's a fascinating work. Down at the bottom, we really have a wide assortment of things. Not so much of a theme there. I will take you to this shelf. These are the works of Rav Soloveitchik, or at least some of the works of Rav Soloveitchik are here, as well as some of the works of Rav Hirsch. These are major lights in modern Orthodox thinking. And I have Proudly, I am the proud owner of the first, second, and third Jewish catalogs, which were one really wonderful, great works to help empower people to practice Judaism outside of traditional structures. So that's more or less the bookcase. I'll show you one or two other treats that we'll have in coming days. This is one of my favorites. I got this from my mom. May she rest in peace. And this is a copy of Charles Warren's book from his Western Wall surveys in the 19th century. We'll go through this in greater detail when we have a chance, but suffice to say it's a very, very interesting inside look into the temple. And, oh, that doesn't fit there. Fitting everything into a library like this is a little bit of a challenge, all the odd-shaped books and such. Lawyer libraries look much more standardized. Got my wedding album, but that'll wait. And yeah, those are most of our treats here. So that's sort of the scope of the bookcase. We will be returning to this, and tomorrow we are going to start to take a look at the Talmud. There's a great deal to look at in the Talmud. The Talmud is one of the most remarkable, not just the text of the Talmud itself, but the way that the Talmud is put together, the way that it was printed and organized, the reference tools that are included. Just a walk through a volume of Talmud, I think you'll find to be very, very interesting. That will be our subject tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.